Welcome to another episode of the Go With John show. Today, I am sitting with Hunt Burke, and I'm very grateful that you're here. Thank you for coming in.
Pleasure.
So Hunt, you are the chairman of Burke Herbert Bank, the oldest continually operating bank in Virginia. So what do you tell us a little bit about what you did, and I've heard some of your podcasts and read some of your bios, but tell us a little bit about how you kind of grew up in the Burke Herbert Bank and what is it like to be the chairman of this great institution?
Well, it's funny. People would always ask me questions as a very young person about the bank or banking or mortgages, and I didn't know. They were asking me that when I was a kid as though that was dining room table talk at home, but of course It wasn't. What happened is my dad had 5 kids, and when we got to be 12 or 13, he said, "You're not hanging around the pool with all those derelicts. Everybody's got to get a job." And I chose the one where I had an automatic ride to work with him. So
that was smart.
So I started really running errands, and in the bookkeeping department, we used to look at checks to make sure they were properly endorsed and high-level stuff like that. And it took me a couple of years to become a teller. And then after that, it was, branch management and operations. And I pretty much jumped in anywhere, whether it was a promotion or a raise. I do move laterally just because I learned more and more about how the bank runs. And
Right.
Burke Herbert Bank was great because it's small enough that you get to see all the pieces. If you work for a larger bank, you might only be in one department and never connect the dots as to how it all gets put together.
So as you were going through and working through the various positions, was there any period of time or were there any positions that you enjoyed more than others?
I guess the operations part was enjoyable because you got to see the nuts and bolts, but I really missed the public, the personal contact with people. So I really enjoyed coming up through the branches and becoming a lender because you could see the difference you made in people's lives. For instance, I was talking about being young and not knowing anything. I just told people some common sense stuff, and they've come back to me 40 years later and said, I lived my life by what you told me and, made all this money and been successful. And I was like, wow, because I didn't really know what I was talking about at the time, except, again, common sense.
Right. Well, yeah, maybe you were repeating things you heard, and but yeah, that's good. So that your time as a teller, I guess you had a little bit of time with the folks, right? They're coming in making their deposits, and you have a minute or two of chit chat. I actually worked at Sovereign Bank in Old Town Alexandria. I don't know if you remember that bank that was there. I think it was on Washington Street. And I lived on Duke Street, so I would walk to work every day, great. And I did that for about a year, and that got old. But yeah, I can see, you have your regular customers that come in, and you get to meet them for 5 minutes at a time, and then you move on to the being a loan officer, and you get a little deeper with them. So it really is all about the people, and I think we were talking before the show. That's one of the reasons why I like to do this podcast, because I've met so many interesting people along the way, and you like to spend time with them and share the stories. So moving on to chairman. So what are your thoughts on your industry today and what's happening with Burke Herbert Bank today?
Actually, it's very exciting. We've got a 2-year now CEO, David Boyle, and he has brought a tremendous amount of knowledge. I think he's a CFO by training and an accountant. And we're really looking at numbers, trimming costs, getting ready to expand. We just opened 2 offices in Fredericksburg.
Right.
Once upon a time, I said we won't open any offices in any place named Berg, Harrisonburg or Leesburg or Fredericksburg. Right. But that's a market very much like Alexandria. You've got the old town and, sort of a sprawling suburb out from there.
Right.
And we've hired some folks that are bankers from that area, so they have a lot of clientele already. And we see that as a nice step from where we are, where you have some branches in Prince William County. So that's a little further down. All banks chase the same things at the same time. It's what we do. So we've gotten into C&I lending and want to, be part of the community more so than making large commercial loans, which is our bread and butter.
Right.
But we really need to supplement that with the hometown stuff, loans and deposits from local businesses.
Mm-hmm. So as chairman, are you spending a lot of time in the branches, or are you now more kind of behind the scenes, focusing on the big picture for the bank?
Sort of behind the scenes. I do like to go around to the branches. Somebody recently said, when you go into a branch, you're like a rock star, and that's a little overkill, but they really enjoy seeing Mr. Burke come in, and
right.
If they know I'm coming, the wife will bake cookies of the branch manager or whatever, and I don't know, it's really fun. Been working there for 42 years now, so I used to be able to say I know everybody, but with 400 employees and some turnover, I try to keep up and keep in touch.
Yeah, it's got to be tough. Have you ever worked anywhere else other than Burke Herbert Bank?
One summer I worked for, I think it was called United Bank in California.
Okay.
Just as a teller. I was goofing around out there. I got a good lesson. I was applying for jobs out there, and I applied for a savings and loan, and the guy said, are you just here for the summer? And of course I lied and said, oh no, I want to work here. And he said, you know what? I want somebody that wants my job. Right. I'm not going to hire you because I don't think you're, serious. And I was 19 years old or something.
Right.
And I remember that. Obviously, to this day, I want to hire people that want my job, that have potential and aren't just there to kill time or, get a paycheck every 2 weeks.
So how did you end up out in California?
I have a brother that graduated from UVA, and he was the one when we were growing up that didn't come to work for the bank. He worked for Heisman's Porsche Audi as a mechanic. He sold Bibles one summer. Very interesting guy. So he went out there and got into banking. And one summer I just went out and spent the summer with him in San Francisco. It was pretty fun.
I bet.
Yeah,
I bet. So you ended up working at United Bank as a teller, did it for the summer, and then you came back and put your roots down in Old Town.
Yep.
So of your five, you have four brothers, right? Because your dad had five sons.
3 brothers and a sister.
3 brothers and a sister.
Yeah.
So any of your other siblings involved with the bank?
My brother Taylor, older brother, was very involved in the bank for 40 years, and he's retired. My brother Jim in California, he became a banker out there and was very successful. But the other 2 have one runs a cemetery and one's an artist. So
well, that's interesting. What kind of an artist?
All kinds. He's really good with his hands and woodwork, and for a long time he's worked for an antique dealer out in Middleburg, restoring things and doing it right. And
fantastic.
Yeah, he's a pretty cool guy.
Yeah. So what was it like growing up in your household when you guys were all young? What was so your dad was running the bank, and what was the dinner table talk if it wasn't banking?
Bickering and noisy.
Typical family stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He just hid his peas under his potato skins, or you took all the chocolate milk. I mean, I got you. My dad was very community oriented, and he would come home about in time for dinner, so there wasn't a whole lot of back and forth. On weekends, we'd hang out with him and either go somewhere, or my brother Jim and he would work on cars. We had some fun cars in the driveway. But it was not a whole lot about banking. It was, except that one time when I was about 10 years old, he said, "I want you to run the bank someday." And I said, "Well, I've got 2 older brothers. What's up with that?" And he said, "You think like I do." And so, when people say something like that to you, it sort of they plant that seed. It sort of, you mull it over, even if not consciously.
Right.
So. Didn't know what else to do.
Right. Well, the interesting thing is you have genetics, and then you have your dad, who could obviously see his genetics in you and the way you think. I mean, it certainly makes sense. So yeah, from a very young age, you were chosen to be Mr. Burke. Holding my fingers up in quotation marks. That's fantastic. So what's your favorite part about your job now? What do you do on your daily routine?
Well, it's great because I'm not in charge of the operations. I work closely with Mr. Boyle, and we've brought on some excellent talent, which I'm not that smart myself, but have been lucky enough to find some really good bankers over the years. And so I deal with the board of directors, education, and looking at new directors. My favorite thing is coming in, going to lunch with high dollar prospective clients or people who banked with us for 100 years. And I listen to a lot of complaints about how we've changed. And, you know, if Mr. Burke and Mr. Herbert were sitting at a desk like they did in 1852, nobody would bank with us. You know, you've got to change. And our focus, in addition to small businesses, has been about 10 or so years ago, we did a study of our customer base. And first of all, there was a huge return because people like to open a letter from Burke and Herbert Bank and do a survey, as opposed to every survey in the world that you come across on a daily basis. But what we found out was that, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but half our customers were over 50 and half of that was over 65. And so, you know, we scratched our heads and said, we better look to the future. So, you know, we're all about now mobile banking and internet banking, and we just made a new website. So we're really trying to appeal to that younger demographic and doing a good job of it, I think.
I wonder if they understand the the kind of the history of the bank when they come to Burke and Herbert. You know, for me, I've banked with Burke and Herbert for decades, and I really enjoy. That's just my little piece, my little connection to a piece of history. You know, it's. But I wonder if the youngsters know.
Well, I meet all the new employees. I meet the new tellers when they're coming in. So they're, 20 years old, something in that era. And one thing I tell them is that don't let anybody at this bank ever say we always did it that way.
Right.
Because again, it's where we are now. The history's fun. If you ever want to come waste an afternoon with me, I'll tell you all kinds of great stories.
Yeah.
But in terms of who we are, it's you all, and it's your customers, and where we're going from here.
Right. All right, fantastic. So we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to hear some of those stories that you would tell me if we were wasting an afternoon together. Can we do that?
Cool.
Fantastic. We're here with Hunt Burke, chairman of Burke and Herbert Bank. We'll be right back. A lot of folks think that building a custom home is a complicated and arduous process. It doesn't have to be. At Stanley Martin Custom Homes, we have the process down to a science. We will bring you through the buying, design, and building phase one step at a time. Head on over to WeBuildOnYourLot.com and check us out. Reach out to us if you want to get started on the path to your very own Stanley Martin custom home. All right, we are back with Hunt Burke, chairman of Burke and Herbert Bank. So thanks again for coming in. I really appreciate that you're here and willing to share stories with us.
It's my pleasure.
So tell us some of the historical stories about Burke and Herbert Bank. I've heard a few of them hanging around the branches, but tell us a little bit about the characters that ran the bank. Some of your dad or your grandparents. What stories do you have for us today?
Well, my great-great-grandfather, who started the bank, and Mr. Herbert were in their 20s. They were just, a couple of young entrepreneurs in Old Town Alexandria, which wasn't the cute Old Town Alexandria. It was a lot of boat builders and dock workers, and a lot of ships came in with goods, and there was the railroad to take the goods out. So very blue collar, but they couldn't have picked a better place historically. Our oldest customer is Mount Vernon Estate, run by the Mount Vernon Ladies Association, and they bought it. They saw that it was in disrepair. This is 1850, so before the Civil War, but they purchased the estate and were fixing it up. But when they purchased the estate, this is later, 1860 or so, I guess, they put the money in Burke, they bought it from the Washington family, and they were friends of the Herberts from all the way back to George Washington. And so they put the $200,000 in Burke and Herbert Bank. And when the Civil War broke out, Alexandria was one of the first places that the Union soldiers visited, and they knew about those funds, and they came to the bank to take them. And we're told that Mr. Burke wasn't there at the time, and so he got word before he came back from lunch or wherever he was. And so when the soldiers came back, the money wasn't there, and they went and searched his home and went as far as his wife's bedroom, and she had a wardrobe there, and she said, "Don't you want to look in my wardrobe?" And of course the Yankee soldier blushed and said, "No, ma'am." And so the next day they took the funds out of her wardrobe, and there was a lady that at Mount Vernon, I think her name was Miss Tracy, and she had permission to cross into Washington because she brought things over to Mr. Riggs, like eggs or fresh baked goods or vegetables. And so they tucked the money in her little basket, and she took it over, and Riggs held it for the duration of the Civil War. And then,
wow.
We brought it back over after the war.
That gives me chills to hear that. That's incredible.
That's a cool story.
It is a cool story. So they've been banking with you ever since 1860?
Even before that, but I can't remember the exact date.
Wow.
So we have a good relationship.
I would say.
Needless to say. And I don't know, through the years, we were involved in the Depression, and World War I and World War II were tough times in Alexandria, and we managed to survive with the help of some very good, loyal customers who, for instance, when 1933 there was a banking holiday at the end of the Depression, all the banks were closed and had to apply to reopen. And one of our depositors came in with $20,000, which in 1933 was a good piece of change, and it really allowed us to open back up again, which we did pretty much right away. The other thing that happened at that time was we went from a partnership, two guys shaking hands. We went over to Washington to reopen the bank, and they said, "Where are your corporate resolutions?" And we said, "We're a partnership." And they said, "Where are your partnership papers?" And we said, "We've run for 81 years on a handshake."
Right.
And it's just about 81 years. It's a little more now since we became incorporated in 1933. So now we have shareholders and a board of directors, and it's a little more formal.
Man, that's amazing. That's amazing. So what about some of the previous Mr. Burkes who were running the bank? I've heard some stories. I guess was there one of the Mr. Burkes who routinely had a parrot? Can you tell us who that was?
Sure, that was my dad.
Okay.
And it must have been after a martini lunch that he went up to G.C. Murphy's, the Five and Dime, and I can't imagine this, but apparently they had a parrot for sale. And he thought that was a good idea, so he bought this parrot and got as far as our front door at home, and my mom stood there with her arms crossed and said, she knew better, not in this house. So the parrot came to live at the bank, and it just became a hit. Whenever there was a slow news day at one of the local papers, they'd come over and interview the nutty bank president with a parrot, or if school kids were on tour or something, they'd all come in to meet the parrot, and it was pretty fun. And,
that is
and
fun.
Worth $1 billion in free advertising.
Right.
So my dad was on the bank was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal one time. Because we didn't have computers, and it was the late 70s, and any new bank would have computers, and we still, like I did in the bookkeeping department, we still looked at checks. We'd have checks where the person wouldn't even have signed it, and there was no account number, but we knew from the handwriting who the guy was. We'd call him up and say, "You need to sign this check." But anyways, the parrot was a lot of fun, and one time Dad went over to testify in front of a Senate hearing on banking regulation, and he went over to say that the regulations are killing us. And as he got over there, I guess it was Jim Moran, the congressman, that said, "Where's the parrot?" And so he sent Dad back in a staff car and got Runyon and came back with him on his shoulder, and that was a hit. And was in every paper. We got copies of papers from Hong Kong. I mean, all over the world. Amsterdam, of copies of this where they took the AP photograph and wrote the story. So I'm lying in bed one night on a Saturday night, late, partially asleep, and my wife elbows me, and it was Dennis Miller's last night on Saturday Night Live, and he had a picture up of my dad and the bird on his shoulder.
Oh my
and
goodness!
Said, "This is Taylor Burke from Burke Herbert Bank," and the bottom line was, "Would you trust your money with this man?" And so we thought it was great, and told my dad about it, and he said, "Is that a good thing?" But anyway, it was fun, and a lot of people saw it.
Yeah. Well, you got to have fun. If you can't, and I think that's the key to being successful in business. You got to have fun. You got to love what you do. You got to love the consumer of your product, and you got to be willing to be yourself, and I think that's pretty amazing. So yeah, I guess the days of the 3 martini lunches, those are all in the rearview mirror, aren't they?
I've just started to watch the show Mad Men. That is a great show.
Yeah.
And it's so reminiscent of that generation, my father's generation, and my kids see a lot more of me, for better or for worse, than we saw of my dad. But he was out mixing and mingling, and when he died, there weren't enough seats in the church, because he knew everybody, and that's when I learned that he wasn't my dad. He belonged, to everybody in the town, and as we would drive through town, he would look at a building or a business and say, we built that building, or we helped that guy start his business or whatever, and it was pretty cool. He brought personality to the bank. I think my grandfather was fairly stodgy. He didn't believe in branches. We didn't make many loans. We wouldn't make an unsecured loan to somebody. But when my dad came along, sort of came roaring in through the 60s and 70s and of course 80s, and then really put us on the map as far as a fun place. And then I'd go to banking conventions or whatever, and people would all say, "Oh, I really love your strategy and what you all are doing." And I'd say, "I didn't know we had a strategy."
Yeah, well, you guys, I mean, it's pretty amazing. So, one question that comes to mind: what lessons did you learn from your dad? Did you learn some? Did he have some wisdom that he instilled in you throughout your years working together?
Yeah, as you were saying about working with your mother, it's tough working with a parent because when we would speak about something, there's that. It's like learning to drive a stick shift automobile with your father in the seat next to you.
Right.
You're just nervous that you're going to make a mistake or whatever. I don't know. He taught me about relationships with people and how important that is, and just the local feel of being in a small town and whatnot, and the people that knew him as we would have lunch or walk around the streets together or whatever. It was made me feel like this is something I could do. This is fun.
Mm-hmm. Almost like you're the mayor.
One time I was walking down the street. I'm in the 200 block of King Street, and Landini's isn't the 100 block. So I was walking down with somebody, and after a block, she said, "Wow, do you know everybody in this town?" And I said, "I've been working on this corner since I was 13 years old. If I didn't know somebody,
Yeah. Well, you certainly know where to get a good Italian lunch.
Oh, absolutely.
There's no place better than Landini's. Yeah, that's true. Fantastic. All right, well, we're going to take another quick break, and when we get back, we'll talk a little bit about you and what life might look like in your future. Hunt Burke. We'll be right back. I'm John Jorgensen, and if you want to learn more about buying a home or selling your existing home, contact us through the show. We work with an incredible network of professionals who can help you get through the process smoothly. Again, that's gowithjohn.com. Welcome back. We are still chatting with Hunt Burke. And again, thanks for coming in. Really enjoying our conversation today. It's just one of the highlights of my life to be able to sit here and chat with you. So let's talk a little bit about your passions in life. So what do you enjoy doing with your time when you're not working?
I've got 4 daughters, and since they were young, we have tried, even when we didn't have any money, we've tried to travel as much as possible and go to Cancun or fun places like that. Or my wife's from California. One summer for a month, we rented a car and just drove around the entire state of California, from the redwoods and from the wine country all the way down to San Diego, and it's a fascinating state. It's got everything. But from there on, we have traveled. Recently, I've decided to take one daughter with me on a sort of bonding trip, and we've been to places that are bizarre and interesting to me.
Such as?
Kathmandu,
Okay.
Bangkok,
Yeah.
the south of the Philippines. There's an island called Palawan, which is very low population and a lot of beaches. Oh my goodness, my wife and I last year went to Ethiopia, which it was amazing. The country is very diverse, and we saw a lot of it. I meet Ethiopians and they ask where I went, and then they say, "Wow, I've never been to all those places." We went to Botswana a couple of years ago, which was the most stunning trip of my life, being out in the middle of the plains and this delta where you would sleep at night and you'd hear lions roaring, or you'd go out during the day and see leopards eating warthogs, or it was just bizarre.
So now, were you sleeping in a secure location?
It was a tent, but
My
it was
goodness.
a pretty nice tent.
Yeah.
It had big wooden doors and a brass tub kind of tent. We weren't roughing it, but one entire side was just a screen.
See, I would be worried about becoming someone's dinner.
Well, yeah, and I said, should we be worried? And they said, "Oh no, you're a few meters off the ground," and an elephant could have just bowled
Knocked the whole thing over.
Yeah, and there were, of course, I want to call them crocodiles. Crocodiles everywhere. I always confuse it with alligators. My fault. And anyway, they were everywhere, and I'd learned that the most dangerous animal is a hippopotamus, which I never thought of. I think of Disney and hippopotamuses in pink tutus dancing around, but apparently they're very aggressive, and they've got giant teeth, and they kill more people a year than anything else. Anyway, it was just fascinating being out in the middle of nowhere. There's very low volume tourism there, so they're very protective of the land, the animals, the whole nature scene.
So on your annual bonding trips with your daughters, where else have you gone?
I took one daughter to Tokyo, and actually my wife has come along on some of these because she couldn't stand the fact that I was going to really cool places.
Right.
And that was fascinating, Tokyo. And they were getting ready, this is a couple of years ago, they were getting ready for the 2020 Olympics. And we know what happened with that. But it was great for us because they were making all the signs into English, because they're not real interested in learning English or speaking English. They're sort of an insular society, and there's certain restaurants we went to where we didn't feel welcome at all. We were at somebody's table, somebody in the neighborhood. But it was a fascinating trip, and we got out of the city, and it was one of the fascinating things was that the trains all ran on time, and that all the different trains and metros and everything were all coordinated, and it was beautifully done, and there were no horror stories of accidents and whatnot. So they had that down pat.
So do you have any bucket list places where you still want to go?
I want to go to Morocco. Really, we've been to a few countries in Europe, but first of all, when I say go someplace, I mean for 2 weeks. I don't mean we drove through 10 cities in 10 days, and had lunch in Verona or something. That doesn't count. You have to really get to know a place.
So you like to go and open your suitcase and kind of stay in one place for 2 weeks.
Yeah, my wife is a planner, so she likes to read the book, and we have to go here and we have to see this. When I go somewhere, I book a plane ticket and a hotel room in Bangkok, and I just go
figure it out.
Yeah, and the
That's the way I
concierge
go.
says go here, and you ask people that live there, where do you eat, or
Yeah.
Where do you get a $10 massage?
Exactly. You got to go out and mix it up with the folks.
Exactly.
That's how you, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just get on the equivalent of the metro and get off at a stop where everybody else gets off, and try to figure out where they're going.
Yeah. That's the way I like to do it too. It's fun. You don't know where the day's going to take you.
Yeah.
So it's funny. I'll just jump in and tell one quick story. So a couple of years ago, we took a road trip to see a friend of mine in New Jersey. And we were in the hotel, and we had a couple hours, and my wife was getting ready to go out, and I have twin kids. My son Alexander was 10 at the time. So I said, well, let's go out and mix it up with the folks, right? And let's go see what we run into. And we went out, and we were in Asbury Park, and we started walking down the boardwalk, and there was a TV crew that had set up, and they had lights and all this stuff. And we're like, what's going on here? And so we started hanging around and asking people what's going on, and finally we got somebody who told us, the governor's coming, right? And I'm like, okay, well, where are we? We're in New Jersey. Okay, Phil Murphy, right? So 5 minutes later, Phil Murphy walks up, drives up, gets out of his car, comes walking straight over to me and my son, shakes my hand, and he goes, "Oh, you're out with your dad today? What are you guys doing?" And we're just going for a walk. And obviously he was working for votes. He had no idea we were from Virginia. So, but yeah, when you go out and you just look for stuff, things happen. So my son still talks about that today, the day we ran into the governor.
And
so
the opposite side of that coin is you meet people that become friends for life, especially with Facebook and the internet and whatnot.
Right.
But we've met people all around the world that we've stayed in touch with, and that's pretty cool. Of course, they all want to come stay with us,
Yeah.
But immigration being what it is, it's really hard for people to get over here.
Yeah, well, I think that's more of a European thing, So we have a lot, originally born in Denmark, and we have a lot of friends in Denmark, and my wife is French, and the Europeans, they love to come visit for sure. So let's talk about what is next for you. So you've been with the bank for 42 years. It did strike me when you said a few moments ago when you were young and you didn't have any money, because I made the assumption that you were just living along with the wealth of the Burke and Herbert legacy. But it's I think it's good to be young and not have money. I think it makes a successful person out of you. But so you've had your career 42 years. Obviously, you've been very successful. So have you had any thoughts about what you want to do for the next chapter of your life?
A lot of thoughts, very few answers. I'm 64, so I hope I don't have to. I hope they don't kick me out at age 65 on my birthday. What is really fun for me now, I could continue doing, is have a little office on King Street and go to lunch with folks and sort of come and go as I please, and meet people who want to meet Mr. Burke. Sometimes you get clients that just gives the extra edge for them to want to come bank with us, because they know the fifth generation of the founding family. So it's kind of fun, and just puttering around and being Mr. Burke, and doing things like this, which is real fun, meeting people.
Right.
I'll never get tired of meeting new folks and hearing their stories and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So in terms of what I want to do that's worthwhile, I'd love to do something that gives back to the community. I've been involved in a number of nonprofits over the years, but if I could find a passion teaching English to younger folks, or I don't know, just helping people develop, helping younger folks, college graduates that don't have a direction, get a direction, or people that live in the inner city of Alexandria that don't have the same opportunities. I'd love to explore possibilities for them and make a difference in some lives. Doesn't matter if it's a ton of lives, but if you make a significant difference in one or two people's lives, that's tremendously rewarding.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and I feel the same way. And that's one of my drivers here again on this podcast, because when I think back when I was younger, it just seemed impossible. When you're 19, 20, 25, even in my early 30s, you're looking around and you see all these people that have cars and houses and great clothes, and you're like, what am I doing wrong? And you just feel like you can never get there, and no matter how hard you work, you're never going to get there. And then as you get older and you start having some success, and now I'm 56, and looking back, it's like it really wasn't that hard. If I'd only known I was going to actually reach this place in my life by continuing to work, it would have made it a lot easier, to work so hard when I was younger. So how do you share that with folks, and how do you teach it? And I feel strongly about that as well. And I think that's a noble cause. And it's funny you talk about Alexandria. When I lived in the 1100 block of Duke Street, and I used to walk down Route 1 to go to work at a competing bank. Back in the day, I worked there for a year. And it was in the 80s, it was not a great place in the 80s. And it's really evolved a lot. And, and I think when you say the inner part of Alexandria, there's probably still a community that could really use your counsel, and your stories that would show them a way forward. So that would be a good way to do it. So any thoughts about how you would actually do that? Would you form a foundation, or would you just do it on your own?
I think I would either do it on my own or through some of the organizations that already function in Alexandria to help kids. There's so many. In fact, sometimes I ask, why don't you all get together, and cut the bureaucracy, and you're all doing the same thing,
Right.
be it the Boys and Girls Club or the Companion Center, or
Yeah.
there's all sorts of organizations. I'm not a certified teacher or anything like that, but it's something less formal, I think, or
Yeah.
a group of people that wanted to make a difference. Not really anything as formal as a foundation. Besides, that takes money, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Anyway, so something along those lines. My young ladies are all in different states. I'd love to go see if there's something there, something cool in Colorado I could do, or Montana that I could do to be helpful.
We all want to be helpful.
Right.
That's good. So what business lessons have you learned along the way? So real early in the episode today, you said that you had given advice to some folks, and they have come back 40 years later and said they were able to have success based on the advice that you gave. So what kind of tips do you have for maybe the young entrepreneur out there that's trying to find their way in life, and they need just a little bit of guidance? What would you say to these folks?
The first mistake I see people make is, wanting to open a big office and buy a nice car and hire a secretary and all that sort of stuff on a new business where they don't have any revenue yet. So I'm just kind of stodgy and old-fashioned and say, you work out of your garage, your basement, whatever you have to do till you get up and running and you can afford all this stuff. They come in to get a loan to launch this idea, this dream, and that's, some dreams come true and some don't.
Right.
So, I guess the lesson of starting small and reasonable and what you can handle, and then building from there.
Yeah, no, I think that's good advice, and that's exactly what I did, right? I mean, when you have nothing except for yourself and your brain and your body, it's actually probably my favorite part in the business cycle. So I've bootstrapped several businesses, and it's always fun and exciting when you start. And when you're by yourself and you're in your home or you're in your garage, if you have a bad month or if you have a bad quarter, it's really no big deal. But when you start hiring people and you've got an office, like you said, and maybe you have some staff and you have that overhead, you have a bad month, it's a big deal. You have a bad quarter, it can put you out of business, right? If you don't have that cushion of cash in the bank to fall back on, it's so important. That's really good advice. So what other advice might you have for entrepreneurs out there that want to grow their businesses?
Relationship building, and that entails just getting involved in community projects, if you're in business, the Chamber of Commerce. You just get to meet a lot of people who are willing to help you, and of course want your business as well. So there's a lot of give and take. Any social networking and whatnot you can do is usually good. I mean, you make friends and they want to come do business with you, and you want to do business with them. All things being equal, they'll come bank with you. In my case, so really, it's just getting involved, whether it be in your church or nonprofit organizations. There's always people hungry for fresh blood.
Right. No, and I'll tell you what, I'm just thinking back, I'm reflecting on my own, career, my own history. The Chamber of Commerce, when I had my company Marketing Mania, I got involved in the Fairfax County Chamber of Commerce, and I got on. I think it's important that you get on some committees, right? Because I think if you just join the chamber and you just show up at their, kind of regular, everybody's there meetings, you're not going to build a relationship. So I got on a couple of committees, and the relationships that I built during that time, this is back in the late 90s or maybe early 2001-2 era, I still have those relationships today. And when you get on a committee with somebody, you build just a much deeper relationship with them, and that really will last a lifetime. And and at the time, I didn't realize it. That's one of those things where it's easy for us to sit here and say, oh yeah, get involved in the chamber and all this. But when you're doing it at the moment, you're like, am I wasting my time? And you don't realize how important it really is. So those are really good tips. So Mr. Burke, anything at all that you want to add to this conversation today?
Have fun, bring people along, enjoy the experience. If you're not having fun, you're doing something wrong. You don't have to have a lot of money to have fun. Some of the happiest people in the world are some of the poorest people in the world, and some of the most miserable people are all fighting about the family business or whatever. I
agree. Yeah.
Looking back, I could have relaxed a lot more and become less wrapped up in things and spent hours working till late hours at night and things like that. When you ask yourself, was that really necessary? Yeah, in a way, but is it more important than spending that time with your family and getting out a little bit more? These are all cliches, but the work-life balance is huge for me. You can take time off and be with your family and still get your job done.
Fantastic. And on that note, we'll end our conversation today. Hunt Burke, chairman of Burke and Herbert. And again, I'm grateful that you came in to chat with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, John.